Allow me to welcome you once again to Conversations with the Prime Minister here at the Anne Mitchell Gift Auditorium of the Scarborough Library facility. It is the 5th edition of Conversations, but the first time in Tobago. And this program really represents the government's commitment to transparency, accountability, democracy, and good governance. Coming to you. So this really is the government meeting with the people, coming to you, meeting you where you are, and not just waiting for you to come to them. Without further ado, I invite the Prime Minister to bring introductory remarks.
Thank you very much. A very good evening to all of you here in Tobago. Permit me to recognize in our presence the Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, Sir Kelvin Charles. And while I'm acknowledging Chief Secretaries, permit me to acknowledge the former Chief Secretary, our High Commissioner to London, Mr. Orville London, who is with us this evening. Permit me to acknowledge the presence of a few ministers who have accompanied me to Tobago, and I welcome them all to Tobago. I'm into my backyard, I should say. But of course, let me acknowledge the presence of a Tobagonian in the lineup, Foreign Minister Dennis Moses, Foreign and CARICOM Minister. Senator Rohan Sinanano, Minister of Works and Transport. Mr. Fitzgerald Hines, Minister in the Office of the Attorney General, and no shirt jokes this evening, right? We have the Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs, a Member of Parliament for Tobago West, another Tobagonian, Minister of National Security and Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, Mr. Stuart Young. He's also Minister of Communication, as you know. And I saw another Minister of Tourism, among the other Tobagonians over here. Member of Parliament for San Fernando East, Minister Randall Mitchell. And behind there we have the Minister of Carnival, is it? The Minister of Culture and the Arts, Mrs. Leanne Gatsby-Dolly. So I'm well supported this evening. I would like to acknowledge other government officials who are visiting from Trinidad. Another Tobagonian I'd like to recognize in the audience among the list of government officials, Dr. John Alleyne. Dr. Alleyne is the agricultural advisor to the Prime Minister, one of our experts who is doing yeoman work in Tobago and in Trinidad with me. And I have Mr. Stephen Gardner, another advisor to the Prime Minister. He's the Deputy Chairman of NIPCO. And I would like to acknowledge, I see a couple of people in the audience, I really would, with your permission, acknowledge Mr. Neil Wilson, who's here with us this evening, former Secretary for Tourism, and somewhere in there I'm seeing a former head of the Defense Force, Brigadier General. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for coming out as you have this evening to take part in this exercise, which we have found to be a very useful exercise in communicating with the population. The format is that I would say some introductory things to you, but I really, for the 2 hours that we're here, I really look forward to hearing from you your questions and your short comments, and we interact around that, and at the end of the evening I think we all end up being better off for that interaction, because I learn from you and hopefully you will learn something from me. The scientific data has shown that when you make a speech to an audience, even a bright one like you, that not a large amount of what is said by the speaker is absorbed and taken away by the vast majority of those present. I think one study I read somewhere along the way said only 14% of what is said is absorbed at the first go around, which means for us politicians, we have to say things over and over again, hoping that that 14% rises to something a little higher. And when you don't do that, then you get accused of not communicating. And one of the acknowledgements that this government makes is that we really do not manage to communicate as effectively as we would like, and sometimes as we hope. Sometimes we think we have communicated. Even among our own peers, we think we communicate, and we find that we have not. Let me give you an example. Today, I was here. I spent the day in Tobago, having come in last night. I spent the day in Tobago with the CEO of Sandals and the international golfer, Mr. Greg Norman, who the Sandals would use to design the third golf course in Tobago as part of the Sandals project. And we at the level of the government, particularly myself as Prime Minister, we have spoken to the country openly about this particular project. We said can benefit from having in Tobago a project like Sandals, because it will have a lot of positive effects on Tobago's economy and on Tobagonians, especially Tobago entrepreneurship and Tobago's contribution to the national economy. Bringing Tobago as the last of the developing island in the Eastern Caribbean in tourism to be the best offer available to the national community, because we're starting it from scratch. So sometimes it's good to start late. And we said that we did this because as opposition leader, in doing my work in preparation for being in government as we expected to be if we were successful in the general election, I invited the Sandals group to look at Tobago as a whole, see if there's anywhere in Tobago they think they would like to partner with us in a project like Sandals. And they agreed, and I was very happy. We told the country on numerous occasions that we are proceeding along the line with this idea. We're talking to Sandals, we're laying the groundwork, we are going to do what has to be done. We're going to have public consultations in Tobago at some time, we got the land at some time, and so on. And we will negotiate the arrangements with Sandals as we go forward. I can tell you, those negotiations, meaning the preparation of a contract document, would take place in the next coming weeks. But to keep us together as a formulating of a project, we signed a memorandum of understanding with Sandals that they will partner with us in this. It's not a binding contract. It's a memorandum of understanding, meaning that both sides agree to work towards this end. We said this on every media in this country. Yet today, the Integrity Commission had to dismiss a complaint against the government for improperly entering into a contract with Sandals. Ladies and gentlemen, we have entered in no contract with Sandals. And let me say it again for the umpteenth time. We have not entered into a contract. We enter into a contract only after we have said that we have a project, we've done some preparatory work, and when we negotiated terms and conditions that are agreeable to the government and to Sandals, then we enter into a contract. Why is that so difficult to understand? And it is not that those people don't understand it. It is that they are running true to form. Cast obstructions at every instance, especially if you have a handful of misguided Tobagonians or those who will agree to nothing that the government do, and get a handful of Tobagonians to join them and kill the project. Today, as I spent the day in Tobago, I want to give all of them my answer to that. Unless the court rules that this government must not proceed, and the court has no authority to rule that the cabinet cannot proceed, this project goes ahead for the people of Tobago. Having said that, let me spend a few minutes giving you a little idea of my vision for Tobago, and I hope that it is your vision as well. Tobago is an integral part of the nation of Trinidad and Tobago. As a Tobagonian, we pride ourselves of being a little more than half of Trinidad and Tobago, because we think that we have in Tobago a lot of what the other part of the nation doesn't have. But of course, that's good for our own ego. But strictly speaking, Tobago is a major part of the nation of Trinidad and Tobago. We have a population that's about 5% of the national population, and we have a much smaller part in terms of physical size. But physical size ought not to be a dominant constraint, and size of population ought not to be a deterrent to being bigger than your numbers represent. One of the things that we are aiming to do is to work towards having Tobago play a bigger role in the economic contribution to the national development. My understanding in talking to the technical experts who work for the government and others, and my own experience having been around for quite a while, is that we could set a target for Tobago with its 5% population to contribute, let's say, 10% of the national GDP. The GDP, the gross domestic product, is really the amount of goods and services that a community produce. And if Tobago sets itself that target, what we have to do is to look and see what is the size of the national GDP in terms of numbers. And if, let's pull a number out of the hat tonight, because the number is changing all the time depending on what they call it. Let's take 164 billion as a figure, let's say 150 billion. That means that Tobago could easily aim to be in the order of $7 or $8 billion of production of goods and services. And of course, it can do a lot more than that, depending on what you engage in. There's 1 square mile in the city of London, and that 1 square mile of the United Kingdom contributes a huge percentage of the British GDP. It depends on what they're engaged in. That 1 square mile in London is engaged in banking. There are 1,000 banks that have their headquarters in that 1 square mile. And the earnings from that operation, that 1 square mile earns a lot more than many nations earn on whole. Small countries can engage in an activity if you pick your activity right. It has nothing to do with your size. It has to do with your will, your vision, and what you've chosen to do and do well. And at this stage, I'm inviting Tobagonians to come out of that situation where we believe that we are small, we are behind, we are dependent on others and so on, and come to the fore in this nation and punch well above our weight. How do you do that? I mentioned Sandals a while ago. Contrary to the idiocy of those who are opposed to us as a government, as a political party, this has nothing to do with any preferential treatment for me and my personal capacity or my political party or the Sandals family. It's a family-owned business. It has to do with choosing the right thing. There are 5 Sandals projects in St. Lucia. 5. And all I'll ask you in Tobago is if it's so bad, take the St. Lucians to the madhouse. And you know who else is there with them? The Bahamians, the Antiguans, the Jamaicans, the Grenadians. They all are happily signing on to a Caribbean label, which is a world brand, world success story. It is in that context that we say, if we use Tobago's attributes, which in many instances are better than those of the others who are there already, at the appropriate time in the very near future, we will present to you the concept of the project, and you will see that the Tobago Sandals is likely to be the best one in the Caribbean. And it ought to be, if it's going to be as successful as we want it to be, because if you get on a plane in New York or in Toronto or anywhere, geographically, Tobago is the last of the Caribbean islands you'll go to. So there's got to be something really good there to get you there. And that project is going to be good enough to bring them from anywhere in the world. Why is it so difficult to understand that concept? That is my concept for Tobago. And of course, if we are going to do that, we also would need to have more support in Tobago, because the area in which Tobago could very quickly move into a larger contribution to the national domestic product is in the area of tourism. And personally, as I told a friend of mine today on the golf course where we are at, we have a limited time to get this done. So therefore, I'm not engaging in the talk, I'm engaging in the do. Let's get it done. We talk about it long enough. We talk about it long enough. What we are doing now is doing what we always said we were going to do. And I'm very happy to tell you that the cabinet that I lead, we are all engaged in getting done what we think ought to be done, and we try to do it right. Now, if we do that, we would need some more hotel rooms in Tobago. That's not going to be the be-all and end-all. In fact, the more rooms we have, what we already have, we will keep, and we hope that we can build more in Tobago and make Tobago a destination. But when you want to market Tobago as a destination, okay, it's a pretty island, you know, nice people, you know, but when the tourists come here, what do they do? You have to have a program of activity to give them an experience. So going to Tobago is an experience. One of the things that we can do is to offer Tobago as a golfing destination. So the experts will tell you golfers travel around the world to play golf. They are high-end tourists, and they stay usually between 3 and 5 days. And even other tourists who come for longer periods for the reason that they may come, sometimes many of them like a golf course to spend some time on. Tobago has 2 golf courses, both of which require significant attention to bring them up to international standard. And the one at Sandals will be the 3rd. If we have 3 well-prepared and maintained golf courses in Tobago, we can genuinely market Tobago as a golfing destination. Add to that, we own an airline, Caribbean Airlines, which is doing better now than it has done in the last decade because it's under good management and it's being properly supported by the government. That airline, tied with a vision and an infrastructure to market Tobago as a golfing destination, we're on the way, we're going somewhere. And of course, we have people in Tobago in whom we have invested significant sums of money in their training. Every Tobagoan who's under 30 years old has probably been exposed to secondary education. And a large population of Tobagoans have tertiary education, easily trainable to provide the high-quality workforce that is required to manage that arrangement. But if we're going to do that and invite all these people into Tobago, into that scale of operation that I'm talking about, we have to have a proper electricity supply. We've worked on that. Tobago, I have to admit that it is not a long time ago, but Mr. London was the first Secretary for Energy in Tobago. And Tobago supply of energy is coming now from gas off the east of Tobago, and that will grow, could grow. Significant drilling is taking place off Tobago now, and we already have our lines coming in. We have gas driven. We just only a few months ago I opened an expansion to the power generation here, so we pretty much have that under control. I think we're at about 75 megawatts or something like that. And of course the next thing we have to do is to make sure we have proper water supply. So we are working on that at the level of WASA and public utilities to make sure that if we have to end up with a desalination plant in the western end, and of course sewage and so on, these are infrastructural things that we are working on. And of course, we are well advanced in preparation for the building of a new terminal building at the airport, because what is there now would not be satisfactory for the scale that we're thinking. And given, let's say this project is ready to receive visitors in 3 years' time, well, by that time we also should have a new terminal building. These are the things that we are doing in Tobago, all in one vision, all in one, towards one end, to make Tobago a more effective piece of the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. And most importantly, to offer those young people that we are training every day an opportunity to have jobs, good jobs, contributory jobs in Tobago. And it's not that they're trained here and they have to leave Tobago and go somewhere else in large numbers, and whether it's Trinidad or abroad, to get themselves in a situation where their training and their ambitions can be realized. So there's a plan afoot, and Tobago's investment, the Chief Secretary will tell you, a few months ago, the Minister of Finance, Minister of Agriculture, and myself, we worked with the THA, and even in the difficult times and all the responsibilities he had to pay this and pay that, we found first $20 million to make available to the THA out of approximately $50 to $100 million program, but they got $20 million to start the program in this fiscal year, which ends at the end of September. And in the next budget, there'll be another $30 million for the THA in their allocation to ensure that the access roads in Tobago that service the agricultural lands are drivable roads. So as I speak to you now, there's an access road development program that is going on in Tobago, and I want to appeal to the Chief Secretary and his staff and Tobagonians. Let the money work for you. Give the state value for money. $20 million of access roads is a lot of roads. And by the time we finish, a number of hundreds, if I presume probably thousands of acres of idle agricultural land in Tobago should become accessible to those in Tobago who want to use the land as the basis of their entrepreneurship. When I was growing up in Tobago, if you had a good strong donkey, you were in good business. And if you had to have a strong neck because you carried the load on your head. And a donkey will walk anywhere, and if it falls, it just falls over and waits for you to pick it up. Nowadays, farming in Tobago is not neck-driven to carry load and not donkey-driven to get to the garden. It is pick-up-driven. So we have to have access roads. So our access roads will allow people to get to those lands. I did not tell you where they are. And while I'm on that, Chief Secretary, I saw the list of roads that you're working on. And I want to know why James Street to Mount St. George is not there. Because I specifically pointed it out to all of you.
It's there.
It's not on the list that was sent to me. So
no, I'll have to double check.
Please do. But we all know from eastern to central to western Tobago, there are all these roads that give us access to some of the best agricultural lands in the nation. From a fertility standpoint, they have good soils, we have good weather, and of course it drains well in the rainy season. In the dry season, it doesn't dry out all that, so Tobago can produce continuously. If we are going to have the scale of visitor arrivals into the kinds of tourism plan that we are going to build in Tobago and expand the ones that we already have, we need to feed these people. So an immediate action on the part of Tobagonians to get into the economy of Tobago and Trinidad and Tobago is to try to feed a few thousand people who have 3 square meals a day. Picture having 2,000 people in the island. 2,000 by 3 meals, that's 6,000 meals. You have an idea as to what's involved in feeding 6,000 meals on the table on an ongoing basis? Go and ask the Prime Minister of Grenada. Ask the Minister of Agriculture of Grenada. Ask the Minister of Tourism of Grenada how one Sandals hotel with 267 rooms has changed that opportunity for Grenadians. We are aiming to build a Sandals here in Tobago that would have about 700 to 800 rooms. That's the scale of the project that we're looking at here in Tobago, because we believe that that is the kind of scale that we need to really move the needle of getting Tobago towards a bigger contribution. And we can do it if we just set about to get it done. There are a million ways that we cannot get it done because this one knows how not to do it and this one knows how not to do it. This one knows what has to be done before Angel Gabriel come down and put on a third wing and all that. So let's get on with it. Let's just get on with it. And the last point I want to make before I throw it open to the floor is that it is not an outsider who will come into Tobago and get Tobago's gears moving and cranked up to the scale that we're talking about. It is you, the Tobagonians, that you. And it would be a tragedy indeed if there's a government in office that is willing to push Tobago in this direction and you push back through misinformation or idleness and prevent it from happening, or worse, that it happens without your support and others come from elsewhere in the nation and from outside and take up the opportunities which you fail to prepare for. So tonight, I just raised that as openness for this evening's discussion. And I would like to put the microphone open to you. We don't have a lot of time. Let's make the most of it. Questions I'll try to answer, and in many instances, if I don't have the answer, it may be that someone of my ministers who are out there, the way we do it is if I don't have the answer, I call on the minister who might have a little more information than I have. And I may even want to call on the chief secretary, because he is certainly going to have a lot of information that I don't have about Tobago. And also, if you are going to make a comment, keep it brief and not too much of a platform speech, and let's get as many voices as possible of those who are willing to approach the microphone. So thank you very much for coming, and thank you very much for taking part. The floor is now open. We have two microphones. We have one here and one over there. So while this gentleman is speaking, if the next person who is interested stands by the next microphone, we can keep it rolling very quickly. Yes, sir, in the bullshit. Just say your name, please, or where you're from in Tobago, and make your intervention.
Okay, my name is Lance Jack. I'm from Buku.
Yes, Mr. Jack, please proceed.
Dr. Rowley, I'm very happy to hear what you're saying. I could tell you up front that if you did not speak first, what I would have been saying is exactly what you have just said. And a lot of people in Tobago know what I stand for. There's one little variation that I want. You talked about the impact of population. And when I look at population, I don't talk about just the indigenous population. I talk about the transient population, the tourism aspect of it. I believe that the population in Tobago should be immediately doubled.
Immediately?
Immediately doubled. We should have twice what we have. Now, I have said before that every man, woman, and child in Tobago who can afford it should have at least 6 children to help. I've said it before, and people here know that. Okay. Now, if we do not have a large resident population.
Please, we enjoy the humor, but he's making a very important point. Let's hear him.
No jokes.
He's making a very important point. Yes, Mr. Jack, please proceed.
In order to get around the small resident population, we should have tourism. The problem we've been having is that we have not been having tourism. That's the problem. But what I want to say, in addition to what you've said, is that I do not know if it exists, because I would say the communication in Tobago is poor. It is poor. So I do not know if these things are happening. Okay? Somebody may be able to refute me. What I have been advocating is a 75-year development plan for Tobago based on population increase. Looking at the 4 factors of population: birth rate, in-migration, death rate, and so forth. Looking at those 4 things to build that increase. And one of the reasons I'm saying 75 years, a lot of us have been saying that we want to leave something for our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. When you look at that, are you not looking at 75 years of thinking? We cannot afford to be thinking 10 years and 15 years. Then we'll never be able to leave something worthwhile for our grandchildren. And because you've said so many things that I'm thinking of, I would leave the floor soon. But I want to say one thing in my vision. I would like to see a coastal highway around Tobago. I would like to see a tunnel between Speyside and Charlottesville. I would like to see the forests being replanted with fruit trees. I would like to see cable cars connecting up the Lame waterfall and the Argyle waterfall. I would like to see a large play park up in the Roxbury area. And I'm sure, sir, one more thing. quarry that we have, that quarry could generate enough aggregate. Let's forget about export. Because the reason for exporting is we need foreign exchange to buy foreign goods. If we use the aggregates to do roads, bridges, buildings, you can see where we will go. We will see actual gold. I visualize a bridge going from Lambo to Bacalet. I could see a bridge going over that. That's what part of my visualization. And we have to start thinking, agriculture, sir, the core estate should be the center for processing, storage, and so on of agriculture. That should be the focal point for all the farms coming in from Tobago. The hotels should be going into Cove to buy their goods. They don't have to keep separate plants. And I'll leave it there, sir, but we could go on and on and on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jack. This is what visionaries do. They dream well beyond what our current mind can digest. I don't know how many of you remember when we used to run to get the Sunday papers to read Dick Tracy. And Dick Tracy used to have a watch on his hand that was a wonderful thing. He could talk to people. You remember that? Today we are living the world of Dick Tracy. Right? So while some of what he has said sounds real far-fetched and beyond what we can conceptualize and may never come to pass, in that basket of dreams there are some kernels of good ideas. But you're going to keep dreaming to get where you want to go. And a lot of what he has said, I'm not so sure about the bridge to Lambo. But the question he made about the point he raised about the population size, let me tell you how I grasp that. A small population can only, on its own, consume so much and actually produce so much if population is required in what you're doing. When I was in high school in Tobago, the population was about 49,000, I think it was. And now I think it's what, 65,000? And that is, at that rate, the double Tobago's population would not be in your grandchild's time kind of thing. Especially that as people get a bit more comfortable, as the standard of living rises, Mr. Jack, people make less children because they want to leave so much for the children that if you have one child, you're leaving something really substantial. But unless you're really wealthy, 6 children or 7 children, you have to have a large body of work. But in fact, the point I think he's making is that if the population grows to about 120,000, you really have a workable number to get done the kind of things you want to do in Tobago, because you'll have enough for those people in farming, some in agriculture. And on the question of the quarry, there's an endless supply of rock in there, but that's only one component to the items that he mentioned. So there are other components to be had and to be paid for. But I would disagree that Tobago could export high quality rock from that quarry, because Trinidad, because of the nature of the geology in Trinidad, engineering projects that require high quality rock, if we don't import it from Tobago, we could find, as we've done before, we've imported high quality rock from Nova Scotia. Piarco Airport was paved with rock from Eastern Canada. Come on. We have an equivalent quality of rock in Tobago. So once that quarry is properly run, and I could tell you, I have annoyed ceaselessly the authority in Tobago to take that quarry out of the public service and put it into a board. That has been done, and we're on our way. So now with good equipment, good work attitude, producing as equipment can, and mountains of stockpile of high quality rock, 3/4 trace, we will have something to export from time to time to Trinidad. If we don't do it, there are times when it will come from elsewhere. For example, we are building a road now to Point 14 from San Fernando on the creek, where at high tide, the sea tends to get over onto the highway. When that road is built, it has to be protected. by what you call armor rock, just huge strong boulders lining the road, so when the sea comes up against it, it doesn't break through onto the road. If that rock doesn't come from Tobago, it's going to come from St. Vincent or some similar place. So let's produce it in Tobago. We know how to do it. Put it on a barge and take it there. That's how the country works. So lots of good ideas. Thanks for your intervention.
Yes, good evening. Good evening, Mr. Prime Minister. My name is Ray Sloper.
Over here. Gentleman in the blue shirt. Yes, sir. Yes.
Sorry, I'm having a bad hair there. I wish I could have, your hairdresser. Anyway.
I thought you were speaking from over here. I didn't see anything. Go ahead, please.
Anyway, I'm glad to see previous Chief Secretary here, Mr. London, and Mr. Wilson, and so on. Because in the past, I've had discussions with the past Chief Secretary, and even continuing now in the future with the present Chief Secretary, Mr. Charles, on tourism projects or investment projects for Tobago. One of those initially was a marina project, which,
Excuse me, sir, what's your name again?
Ray Sloper. Ray Sloper, S-L-O-P-E-R.
Okay, you go ahead. Yeah, I thought it was somebody else. But go ahead.
Okay. Now, Mr. Charles has been very forthcoming with information. We've had a couple of meetings, and my colleagues are very pleased with what we're hearing from Tobago. Now, I live in Tobago. I was born in Trinidad, but have lived in Tobago since about 83, 84. Went away for a little while, and when I came back, I'm living in Tobago. So I consider myself Tobagonian, although some people may not. But that's beside the point. The thing is, coming back to the Marina project, I find it very difficult, when I did my initial research, to get information regarding marinas or the feasibility of marinas for Tobago, specifically for Tobago. I can find numerous bits of information on the web and through private contacts for anywhere in the Caribbean, the Bahamas, Florida, and so on. And I know for a fact there is, or there has been a few surveys done or feasibility studies, and it just eludes me as to where or how I can get my hands on it. Mr. Charles has been grateful enough to assist.
Let me help you there. If that is your point of interest, sorry to stop you, but I can help to accelerate that conversation right now, and I might be able to assist you. Let me say what's happening on that score. There have been, a long time ago, an attempt to have a marina in Tobago down at the Pigeon Point area. Some kind of design was done, some talk had gone on, and there was supposed to be some dredging and so on and so on. And I think it was aiming to do that in the area of just inland from what is now the Heritage Park. That is as good as dead. So you might hear about that. Right. Then when the plantation, Tobago plantation was built, there was also in the vision there for a marina in an inlet just beyond where the clubhouse is inside there. That is still on the cards, but that project has pretty much matured now, but it will take an issue. But more importantly, that would have been a small marina. What we have done as this government, as part of this effort to push Tobago to a place where I think you want to take it, with that marina, we went out and invited proposals in the concept of public-private partnership. Because let me say this, a lot of what we want to do now in this trust of getting things done require a lot of money. When we had a lot of money, some of these ideas didn't come to fore or were not acted upon. We are trying to act on them now when we don't have the money to fund them from the government. So we're using the concept of the public-private partnership, meaning the government has certain things to put into the project, others may have other things, and together we can get it done. We invited proposals from the world to the request for proposals to tell us, look at Tobago, and we identified the Cove area, the Canoe Bay area. Tell us if you're interested in building a marina in this area or any other area in Tobago, but you would have to, it's a design, you do have to do the design, you have to finance it, you have to build it. And the arrangements for doing that, we can negotiate that with the government. That request went out a few months ago, about 3 months ago. The deadline for submission was the 22nd of last month. We put a team in place now. I'm advised that 2 proposals have come in, 1 local and 1 international. The deadline for evaluating that, the cabinet has put a small team in place over 2 weeks to evaluate the offers that have been made. And then we'll be able to tell you what the offers are and whether we have an interested party who is prepared to do the design, do the financing, and building in Tobago and Marina. Why we have gone to Cove is because we want, in the same concept I spoke about a while ago of a larger scale tourism plant on the hotel side of the airport terminal building and so on, we want to benefit from the fact that Tobago is outside of the hurricane belt. As I speak to you now, there's a lot happening in the Caribbean, which is an area for boating. A lot of people do boating in the Caribbean. But during the hurricane season, particularly recently because of the amount of big hurricanes that have caused havoc in the insurance industry, some insurance companies have pulled out of providing coverage, and those who have stayed, the rate for insurance for vessels have gone up considerably. So we believe that this is the opportune time to build that facility in Tobago, a large enough facility to hold a lot of vessels, and to market it to the boating population that Tobago is the place to keep your vessel in winter, in hurricane season. And of course, once the vessels are coming here, there are certain knock-on things that will come, which is maintenance, servicing, food, security, all kinds of businesses, onshore businesses will happen, simply because Tobago is a place where you can keep your expensive craft and watch the hurricanes pass. We've been exposed to a hurricane once every 25 or 30 years thereabouts, as against every season. You have to expect that once a hurricane develops anywhere in the lesser Windward Islands or Leeward Islands that you're exposed. If we build that marina, I'm anxious to hear what the proposals are from those who have proposed. And once we evaluate them and we see them as doable, the government will make a decision and we will negotiate terms and conditions and we will proceed to build that marina. That's where we are at right now.
Okay, the second part of my question then, that explains it very well, sorry. But
before you continue, allow me to interject here. I'm just mindful that we have 2 queues of persons waiting to ask questions. And we are live on CTV. We are also live on I-95, Tambrin 92.7, Power 102. So I'm not saying to finish, but I'm just asking persons to be very direct with their questions. Try to make your contribution as concise as possible so that you give other persons the opportunity to contribute.
Thank you very much. Proceed quickly. Let's hear the second point quickly.
The second part of it is, having lived in Tobago for a number of years, there are quite a few fishing villages, as you know, around Tobago. One of the things that are desperately needed are jetties with fueling facilities, not just for yachties, not just for people visiting the island, but for the local fishermen, dive industry, fishermen.
Okay, point taken. Thank you very much. I see we have long queues, so let's, as she said, let's keep it.
And we shall alternate. So we'll take one from one side and then we go to the other side in the interest of fairness.
A pleasant good evening to Dr. Rowley and members of his cabinet team. My name is Mr. Benjamin. I'm from Moriah. I'm not feeling too well, but I have some great concerns. I wish the health minister would have been here tonight. Is he around? I have some great concerns.
Well, I'm sure you might be listening somewhere.
All right.
Yeah, come straight to the point. Let's go.
First of all, sometimes I wonder if every creed and race have an equal place in Trinidad and Tobago. Because of the fact that most of the times international things come here and Tobagonians have to go to Trinidad, and we have a lot of wasteland down at Chauvin down there that we could have, like cricket, a good cricket stadium and stuff like that. Another point is, you cannot owe the government when you owe the government, you have to pay interest on the money. It's customary that most of the time between the months of April and May, people get back their income tax return. I want to find out tonight, when are we going to get back our income tax return? They have school about to open. And a lot of parents are looking for the little thing to help furnish the children's school books, and we're not hearing nothing about that.
Is that your only question, Mr. Benjamin?
Another thing.
Okay.
We're speaking about Sandals coming here, and the health system is not what it ought to be. I am a patient right now with prostrate, and there are doctors up there who cannot put in a catheter inside you properly. Putting that into me, and for 2 days, no urine is getting inside of there. You understand? So the system, you're talking about international hotel coming here, and we don't have adequate doctors to take care of the well-being of Tobagonians here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much for your points. Let me just say one thing. I'm sure that the authorities would have heard your complaint. The placement of a catheter is not supposed to be putting man on the moon. So I'm sorry you had a bad experience with that, but we have our Secretary for Health here, and she certainly would pay attention to that. But in terms of the quality of healthcare in Tobago, we are in the process, still in the incipient stage, of trying to bring Tobago into a wider health delivery pool, because with the best will in the world, there's only so much that we can make available to a population of 65,000 people. You can't have the world's best neurosurgeon sitting at the hospital to do 1 or 2 cases a year, and the same thing with all the specialities. But if Tobago's hospital has access as part of its operations to a wider situation, that could be improved. And we are working towards improving from where we are. So let's not get into the mode of just crying down what we have or where we are at, but turn it around a little bit and try to see how we can move from where we are to where we want to get. We have just announced that in order to pay some of the national debt, part of which was owed to the University of the West Indies, hundreds of millions of dollars, we have used an asset, which is the Couva Hospital, to pay off some of that debt. And in so doing, bring the University of the West Indies into the healthcare delivery of Trinidad and Tobago in a way that they had not been before. They now have a teaching hospital at Mount Hope and Port Spain General together, but we now add to that a teaching hospital which will also be open to international students and also open to Tobago Hospital being part of that teaching hospital environment. We believe that if all of that is put together in that way, we could offer a higher standard of healthcare delivery, a stronger economy around healthcare services, and Tobago would benefit significantly from that development. We are well ahead in working with that. The university and the government have been working with that, and we have been able to make that announcement in the last, I think it was 2 weeks ago. So look forward to that going forward. And I hope that Tobago will accept this offering and cooperate, and the Tobago Hospital moving towards taking part in, as a part of a teaching hospital, and look towards healthcare tourism be part of the Tobago economy that I talked about earlier on. Yes, we're on this side, so the left side.
Oh, good night, everyone. The name is Cyril Collier.
Are you Tobagonian?
Oh yeah, who asking me that? Yes, I live at Lambo.
That's one of my teachers, right? I'm sure he left Trinidad to come and tell you that. Yes, Mr. Collier, come to the point quickly.
Good, yes. I'm more concerned with sports tourism. A week ago, we had the Great Race here. And the Great Race, we have invited lots of foreign competitors. And one of the things which we could look at is the question of, as a previous speaker spoke about it, a marina. Because when you look at the race on Saturday, you'd have seen that the whole of Tobago was covered with lots of yachts and all kind of boats, and the race finished about 1.5 miles outside in the ocean. So what we're looking at, and would appeal to you, is to get that marina built as quickly as possible, because we had a foreign boat coming down here, Lucas Oil, and he said, we're going to come back, he's going to bring other people with us. And that's sports tourism. So I'm just throwing this out to you. If you could look at it and get that marina built as quickly as possible so that we could enjoy the benefits of a world-class marina, and we're able to see sports tourism, especially powerboat racing in Storby, a success. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know if you all have observed, this year was the 50th year of that event, and this year the Trinidad to Tobago race is now certified and authorized as an international event on the international calendar. That will do wonders for promotion, and the people who kept that sport going, the payoff is about to come, because if we get on the international calendar in that way, then we just have to prepare ourselves and make the most of it. It has tremendous potential. Thank you, Mr. Colley.
Ms. Cook.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shirley Cook, and I'm here representing myself, some of the business community people in Crown Point, and I must say that I wouldn't thank you for coming because this is part of your job, but I want to say that we all should appreciate the fact that the earthquake has treated us well as a country, and for that we all should be appreciated for that. Should be thankful. I'm here this evening because there are many persons who were very disgruntled about the situation that's presently happening in Tobago. As a business person, knowing that for it has been going on 2 years now, that we have presented our case to the JSC, we have discussed the challenges with the inter-island transportation, which is the crust of Tobago's immediate problem right now. We have no tourists, we're struggling as business people. Why is it that you as a government are unable to provide an efficient, reliable, and predictable inter-island transportation? Why is it that Tobago cannot be in control of the administrative and operations of the inter-island transportation system, and to have that be centralized in Tobago? You opened it about Sandals. I am one of those who are in support of Sandals coming to Tobago. I have been ridiculed because some of the people around me are not in support of Sandals. So I try to educate them because, one, as a Sandals customer myself, and second, being able to visit Grenada to understand the back operations of Sandals, I think it is important for the THA, and I would use the THA because I believe central government needs to allow the THA to function and be more independent, especially that we're looking for autonomy, to provide a panel that could help educate Tobagonians on the benefits of Sandals, despite there will be some challenges. On that note, I know everyone has to speak, but I would like to know if the Sandals project, the airport project, are foreign financed, if those contracts are foreign financed. Well, there will be one, you indicated that earlier.
You've raised a lot of points there,
yeah.
right? So
what I want to know is, are those contracts, how is Tobagonians now going to be burdened with paying those should we falter in some way? Because that's one of the questions that I've been unable to answer by the critics of Sandals. And as a supporter and wanting to support this project, I want to have full confidence that this is something that Tobago can embark on, knowing that it will bring full benefits for Tobago's development.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Cook, you've raised a lot of points there. let me see if I can respond as I remember them. You said you're being ridiculed for supporting the Sandals initiative. Let me just remind all of you here and those who are listening at home that when the government sought to build the Claude Noel Highway, there were people in Tobago who were ridiculing people who supported it. I want to ask you all today, is there anybody in this audience who has a problem with the Claude Noel Highway? But when that highway was being built, as part of the political opposition to the PNM that was building that highway for Tobago's development, those with their political agendas saw it fit to put common sense aside and oppose it. So, Ms. Cook, today, you are experiencing the same thing that we experienced with the Claude Noel Highway. Do not be disheartened by that. Secondly, you asked some very important points. You asked that we allow the THA to do what, well, let everybody carry these projects. There are some projects that have to be carried by the central government or they will not go anywhere. For example, even as we are pressing on with the Sandals project, the reason why we are still at this stage is because the unsurety of our commitment to it allowed St. Lucia and Barbados to get ahead of us. So whereas initially when the project was raised and made public here in Tobago, we were like number one in the line to get the next Caribbean Sandals. We are now number 3 because the 5th one in St. Lucia is ahead of us and the 2nd one in Barbados is ahead of us. Now, if we are to get that, it's a family business. It's a big business, but if people believe that we're not too serious about it, or that the opposition to it, or that the government is not committed to it, we're not going to get anywhere. I, out front, have been giving that commitment that we are committed to this, and give that comfort that the people of Trinidad and Tobago, we are committed to this bit of expansion. You talk about letting the THA do more of it. But in the end, you ask if it is to be funded by foreign money. The answer is yes. These development projects are largely going to be funded by borrowed money. Because right now, our country is not generating surpluses on our account, on our earnings account. All the budgets for the last 9 years, we have been spending more than we have been earning. In other words, we have been running deficit budgets. We cannot take the position that because we are running deficit budgets, we cannot do development projects. We borrow for development. If we borrow and fet it out and drink it out and waste it, well, then that's dangerous. But if you borrow for development projects, those projects will contribute to taking you from a deficit situation in the long term to a better position. So let's, for example, take the Sandals project. It's going to cost about, let's pick a number out of the hat. Let's say $400 million US. We borrow that money. It becomes part of the public debt. The government owns the hotel. Put the management structure in place. So we have a Sandals hotel which the government owns. Well, boys, some people go out mad over that. But ladies and gentlemen, we borrowed money and built the Hyatt Hotel in Port of Spain. The Hyatt Hotel is the best earning hotel in the country and it's a success story. But of course, when we were building it, Ms. Cook, there were those who wanted no part of it and it was a bad idea. When we built the Hilton Hotel, it was government that built it. So the Hilton Hotel is all government owned, run by the Hilton. The Hyatt is all government owned, and by government here I mean the people of Trinidad and Tobago. You are a shareholder in the Hilton and in the Hyatt, and the same thing will happen with the Sandals. Right? But in this case, up front, because we are in the kinds of financial situation that we are in, we are also at this stage inviting equity partners into that project. so that the government may not have to carry the whole cost. But if we don't get an equity partner to come in with us, well, we have to carry the whole cost because we're committed to building it. But if before we get to the point of construction, an equity partner come in and say we want 10% or we want 20%, we invited Neil and Marcy. They said yes, they will consider it. We invited Ansa McCall. They said no, they're not interested. We invited Guardian Life. They said they're interested in looking at it. So it may or may not be that there will be government and others. Ladies and gentlemen, let's know our history. When we built the Magdalena, it was the government and some private sector partners that agreed to build that hotel, and that's how the Magdalena was built. Hilton had about 8%. When it was time to put in money to do the maintenance, Hilton said they're not interested in putting any money on the maintenance. We said, but you can't have that if you're a partner, you got to put your money in. They said, you know what? Take the shares for $1, we gone. Because we're not really interested in owning a hotel. Our core business is in managing hotels. So we got the Hilton shares for nothing. The other shares, they too ended up in the government's hand. So the bottom line is there are times when the government stands alone in doing what has to be done for the people, and it is good governance to have the fortitude to do what has to be done then. So this project at this stage will attract a number of naysayers. I say that's par for the course. And if the THA, if the operations of the THA were such that the THA was allowed to borrow on its own, of its own initiative, that $400 million to build that hotel, then yes, if the hotel wasn't a success, then the Tobago THA would have had to pay for it. But of course, where does the THA get money from? The THA does not raise its own taxes in Tobago. The THA gets its allocations from the central government. So at the end of the day, the answer to that question is the people of Trinidad and Tobago will be holding that note for that hotel because it is part of our national development. Right? So if you want the THA to be more involved, like to have the ability to raise the taxes and to borrow the money to build it, say so, Mr. Charles, that's what you want to do. Or if you want to be part of the wider national community where we have one national debt and we have allocations as to where the money is spent, well then that's where we are at the moment. It will be built from the taxes of the people of Tobago and Trinidad, and it will contribute to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So those are the main points I picked up from your intervention, and I'm thankful for your for raising them because they are important points in understanding what we are doing.
Okay.
The airport, let me just, I'm reminded by Minister Young, how are we going to get an airport terminal building? We use the method of the build, own, lease, transfer. That's called the BOLT arrangement. You build it, you own it, you lease it to the government, and at the end of a period of time, you transfer it to the government. So in other words, somebody with money, and there are these people who have money who would want something to do with the money to earn something on it. And they come into these arrangements and they build it for you using their money. You factor into it the cost of that money, the return on that money, and you make payments along the way as lease payments. So instead of putting out $500 million to build it now that you don't have, and therefore you don't get the stuff built, you allow others to build it. But then you can afford to make a $20 million payment every year going forward, and say after 15 or 20 years, you own it. That's how so you get it done, you affordably pay for it, and in the end you own it. So that's the BOLT arrangement, and that's what we are using for the airport terminal building. We actually, this is a way of mobilizing funding that you don't have, but which you will pay for along the way. Now, you would have seen in today's news, we're evacuating the central building in Port of Spain Hospital. The largest hospital block in the country is in Port of Spain Hospital. That block, since 2009, and I'm saying this for the benefit of those in Trinidad who are criticizers of this government and have a lot to say about everything we do. Since 2009, that central block had been found to be engineeringly unsound. Since 2009, we've spent billions of dollars between then and now. And I could tell you, I live about a quarter mile from that hotel, from that block. And during that hurricane, during that earthquake, all I could think of, I'm listening to hear if I hear anything. other than the sound of the earthquake, because I was terrified that that building in that strength of earthquake could have come down. It survived, but it had suffered some damage, and it now is even worse than it was in 2009. And we're having now to evacuate patients to where? To overcrowd the other hospitals. This government in this time, where we don't have any money, we are aiming to use private sector money to build a replacement building. And we are well underway in that. As a matter of fact, we went out for requests for proposals. We are the contractors or the financiers have asked for a little more time to put it in place. And I think, but that is that period ends in September, I think mid-September, when all the proposals will come in. We'll evaluate them, we'll choose one, and a contractor will be put on, whoever is financing it and the contracting it, construction will start on the building of a replacement building in the hospital in Port of Spain. That's what we're doing. We're not just talking about it, we're doing it. And that, the person who raised a while ago the earthquake that we just survived, if we survived anyway and should say thanks to Almighty God, it is that that building in that hospital has survived that earthquake. Because if you look at the history of earthquakes of that strength around the world, you would be hard-pressed to find one that has gone through a country, the whole country, through developed areas in the country, and have not reported a single casualty. We are fortunate people. Let us just thank God that we are for the moment. Next person, please. Over there.
So, Aaron, before you go, I'm very conscious of time. It's 8:36, and I'm determined to have all persons who are standing in line ask their questions. So, again, I'm going to ask for your cooperation. We're going to keep it tight. You make 2 points or 2 questions. I won't want to interrupt you, but if I do find you're going on very long, and before you make your point, I am going to have to interrupt you.
May I ask for a little indulgence, moderator? Miss, what's her name? Miss Cook had raised something about the inter-island sea bridge. I have here the Minister of Works, and I think he should be made to say a few words on that. Minister, could you just indicate where we at with that? And one need not revive how we got here, but I think we can talk about where we at and where we're going. Your mic isn't on. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Okay. Where we are at right now, as we speak, we have the TNT Spirit, which is working the route. Today, the crew for the Galleon Passage arrived in Trinidad and Tobago. What is going to happen next week? The Galleon Passage is going to do its trial run to Tobago, and if everything goes well, we're hoping that by the 3rd week, the vessels should be put into work. That will give us 2 vessels in Tobago. In today's newspaper, you'd see an ad out for another fast ferry. That ad will be out for 2 months, and we're hoping that we'll be able to put into service a 3rd ferry to do the inter-island. Yeah, that will be a lease arrangement for 2 years, and the cabinet did announce that the government is going out for the purchase of 2 brand new passenger fast ferry. So we will have 3 vessels operating. Once the 2 new ferries come in, then we will replace 2 of the older vessels. So we should have working 3 brand new vessels with a plan to replace the vessels long before they ever get to the position that we're in now.
And if I may clarify a bit, and just again, this is such an important thing to you. If I may clarify a bit, the Express is not going into dry dock. You would have seen the government saying we are selling it as is where is, and that is why that request for proposal for that other fast ferry. And let me just say something very clearly here. The Galleon Passage is not a fast ferry. If you want speed, don't go on it. And let me just remind you all that the first fast ferry that ever worked in Tobago to Trinidad was the Cat. And before that, we were going to Trinidad and coming back night and day. We bought the Galleon Passage because it was available at the time we were out looking for a fast ferry. Fast ferries are hard to get. And we bought it because eventually we expect to use it from Togo to Tobago. We will have a service from Port of Spain. We'll have a service from Togo. You must have heard about that Togo port. If the minister had time tonight, he will tell you about what's happening with respect to Togo and the Togo port, and we will link to Tobago. But that is for another time. So don't go on the Galleon Passage and come back and tell me it's slow. It is supposed to be 22 knots, right? It's a single hull, 22 knot ferry. It's a ferry, but it's going to take a fair time longer to get to Tobago. That plus the faster ferry of the Spirit, and a few months later on, another fast ferry should give Tobago adequate service. Adequate service. And let me just appeal to you all here in Tobago. Don't be your own worst enemies. Stop bar talking the place. If I was in Trinidad, as I am, and I wanted somewhere to go, the last place I want to go is Tobago. Because you get on as though Tobago is a hellhole. And that you go, you can't, we have 5 planes going back and forth, you can't get a seat, but no tourists in Tobago. You come, you have, every day we have 2 ferries coming, a cargo ferry. It's not the best in the world, not the newest in the world, but it's getting the job done. We have a fast ferry coming every day, going back and forth. What you have to understand is that when you get into a difficulty, whatever the nature of the difficulty, you work your way out of it. You don't embrace the difficulty and sink yourself in the process. Stop bad talking Tobago. Tell Trinidadians. Because if you keep doing that, those who are inclined to come to Tobago will look somewhere else. And they are looking somewhere else. I talk to my St. Lucian friends. You know, you're among the Trinidadians go to St. Lucia because Tobagoans keep telling them don't come to Tobago. Just stop it. I mean, you can't buy a ferry in the supermarket. You can't buy a ferry in the hardware store. You go out there in the world, you look for it. And you see those people who hang around the port say they want to provide ferries? Let me tell you something. If you all have any idea what was going on with that port, take it from me that the firing of the 2 most senior people on that port should be a wake-up message for you here in Tobago. And as long as this government is in office doing what we are doing, which is providing good and honest government to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, all we ask of you is patience. We're going to fix it.
Thank you.
We have found the money. The Australian government is assisting us in the funding for the 2 vessels. We have found the money. We're going to buy 2 new vessels. So all this going out every so often to get somebody old vessel like this bacana, we are going to have 2 new vessels here by mid-2020. Ordered by us, built for us on our specification, our configuration, and this matter will disappear from Tobago before the end of 2020. That's how we have to deal with it. But in the meantime, let us make the most of what is available and tell the rest of the world, especially Trinidad, that Tobago is open for business. Yes, please proceed.
Thank you for the response. That was actually one of the questions coming off on Facebook. And just to remind viewers that we are live on Facebook. You can send your questions to OPMTT and on Twitter, OPM_TT, and we will try our best to respond. So Aaron, you can continue. Remember, short, brief, direct to the point. Thank you.
Good night. My name is Aaron from Lawrence. All I want to concern about, can you take off the $50 for the late fee? Because if we still go by the airport, we still face the same problem.
Sorry, I missed the first point.
If we still go by the airport, we still face the same problem. How can you charge $50 more?
What problem? What problem?
He didn't hear the first part, so ask the question again.
If we still go, and sometimes your flight delay, sometimes they want to charge you $50 more. It making no sense. How can you charge you $50 as Tobago people?
For delayed flight?
Yeah, many times. And when you look sharp, the problem is still there. They're not willing to fix the problem, but they're willing to charge you $50.
No.
That ain't making no sense.
The $50 fine is for indiscriminate cancellation of the flight. I don't know that if your flight is delayed that you get charged. You don't get charged. What was happening before? Again, let us face the reality. What was happening before is that people were making bookings and indiscriminately not using the booking that they've made, which means that at the time when they made the booking, they denied somebody else who could have used the seat access to that seat. In order to reduce that incident, we have put a fine or an increased cost on the charge, on the ticket, that if you make a booking and didn't travel on that day, you change it to another day, then you pay the additional $50. That should discourage. I don't know that it is, because for some people, that $50 fine is no problem. They will still make the booking and travel whenever. But let's understand something else too. With the best will in the world, there will be a limited number of airline seats between Trinidad and Tobago. This thing about a seat being there for you whenever you choose to travel on whichever day is not reasonable. And of course, because of the nature of the relationship between the two communities, most people want to come at a particular time and leave at a particular time. So you have peaks of demand, and if you then the seats that you make available, if those seats are booked up by people who don't travel, all that does is make it more difficult for the airline to service you. So I am surprised to hear that somebody is being charged, and I don't think that is correct, that if the flight is delayed, well then the airline works towards bringing it back on. And delays in the airline business, I don't want to say normally, I think it's part of the operations. Yes, I was coming here yesterday. We were on board, the engine started, we started to taxi, and we stopped, turned the engine off. We were delayed. You know why we were delayed? Because one of the generators on one of the engines failed and required attention. And the pilot said, the engine is okay, but the generator is, you keep me on the ground till you fix that generator. As we say in Tobago, up there no branch. It is at sea, if you fail engineeringly, you could just drift in the ocean. On the road, your car breaks down, you wait for a lift. That plane that goes up there, please, don't push them to take chances with your life. Let them delay you and get you there safely. So a delay is usually there's a reason. There's a reason for the delay sometimes. And if it's equipment, let us just be patient. You go to America, you don't behave so, you know. In America on Thanksgiving weekend, people asleep for whole weekend in the airport, you know. America has tens of thousands of planes, but on Thanksgiving weekend there aren't enough seats. Christmas, same thing. And of course, with all that equipment and all that engineering, there are delays. We are sometimes too hard on ourselves. We must demand the best service from those who are involved, but we must also be reasonable. And also be careful with the misinformation. Because this is an era where there are some people who make a career of misinformation to get you upset for an agenda that they have. Right? We have a number of planes dedicated to Tobago. Those seats are limited because a certain number of planes working on a certain number of rotation can only provide a certain number of seats. But then on holiday weekends, we may find that we don't have enough seats. Right? Then we have the sea service, which on many occasions come to Tobago or leave Tobago not full. Very soon that problem is going to recede, and then we proceed with the improved circumstance. So don't upset yourself too much about that as we go forward. But demand good service and making the most of the best of what we have. Yes, next person.
This answer.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Prime Minister,
good evening,
everybody who's listening at home.
Please talk in the mic and so we can all hear you.
Yeah, I'd like to find out.
Where do you say you're from?
Well, Trinidad, really.
Your name?
Caesar.
Your name?
Caesar.
You live in Tobago?
Yes, sir.
Yes, please proceed.
I'm a health officer.
Okay.
Right. I'd like to find out something. Your Minister of Labour, she had a bill that was to be presented for the ending of contracts in the public service. And she never got back to it. She only said that she had a skeleton draft of it. And then when she was in Tobago, she said it was before the cabinet. And that was the last I've heard of it. So I wanted to find out where was she at with that? Or the Ministry of Labour is at that.
Well, let me correct that, because I don't know that there's any bill for the ending of. I don't think there'll ever be any ending. To treat with contract workers. Let's say that, and that's a different story. To treat with contract labor in the public service. It means that the terms and conditions and the current engagement would be somehow improved.
Right.
To treat the bill that she's working on.
Right.
Is to treat with contract labor. The last I heard, it was that the work was done. It was close to. Minister, are you aware? Could you tell us where we are to that?
Evening. Yeah, it's not a bill that's being looked at. Really, what it is a policy decision. So there has been work done, and we're looking at it. Subcommittee is looking at it, and what it really is to do is to find a way to regulate the use of contract work in the public service. Take a policy decision away from the use of contract work, especially short-term rollover contracts, and move it towards permanency in the public service. So it is being actively looked at. As you would imagine, it affects a wide spectrum of workers in the public service, and there are a lot of implications, etc., including potential funding arrangements, because right now it's gratuity in contract versus pension issues, etc. So it is being looked at actively.
But there will always be need for contract workers in the public service. Yes, sir. Left side.
Good evening, greetings, Prime Minister.
Good evening, sir.
Thank you for the conversation this evening, and I'm happy that I'm here to converse with you on two short points. My name is Reginald Vidal, and I am very much in support of your vision for Sandals in Tobago. It's a wonderful vision, and I hope it becomes a reality. My concern, as I am now in Tobago living, and I've been here for the last 2 years,
lucky you,
is that I seek my interests in Tobago as I sought while I was in Trinidad. And as long as I'm in Tobago, I am going to do my best to seek the interests of Tobagonians. And one of the things I am concerned about leading up to when Sandals starts and when it's finished is the fact that tourism has to fall in line and not wait on Sandals to come to generate tourism in Tobago. As it stands now, I'm not seeing the generation of that kind of tourism drive which would lead to link with Sandals when Sandals come on stream. I think it's like just waiting back for something to happen and then jump on board. That is not good enough. I don't support it. I want to see a tourism thrust in Tobago leading up to linking with Sandals when it comes on stream. That is one. There are some hotels in Tobago I would like to ask you to look at and consider having them completed so that when Sandals comes on stream, you're not going to have these hotels overgrown with grass and become like the lost city of Venice. As I'm seeing one, if the grass continues with the rainy season, you would not see that hotel again. And that hotel is about 80% completed. I ask that that hotel be completed before Sandals comes on stream.
Which one is that?
That is a hotel up at the Sanctuary. If up at the Sanctuary in Pleasant Prospect. I would ask of you, if before you leave, if your detail could just drive you through there, I would be happy that you see it and understand why it has to be finished. The second point that I just want to make...
Let's just make that clear, right? For those who are listening, that is not a state project. That's a private sector project.
No, it's not. No, it's not. My understanding is...
A state project?
Yes, it is. I understand.
Wait.
From my understanding, it is owned by the THA.
The THA owns it?
Yes.
Okay, no, I'm educated on that one. Yeah, carry on then, please.
Okay.
Be brief, eh?
I'm very brief, very brief. The second one
I've just learned something.
The second thing that I want you to look at is the security in Tobago as it stands now, where it is becoming more of something for concern. It's no longer the laid-back security in Tobago as you would know it to be, and as I am now coming to know it to be. And I am asking that an additional division be added to the Tobago House of Assembly, and that division must be a division for Tobago security. In a few days' time, we have an Assistant Commissioner of Police Demitting Office, Mr. Garfield Moore. A wealth of experience is going to waste, and I ask that that new division be headed by ACP, Mr. Garfield Moore.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vidal. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your intervention. Thank you. What I will say to that is that Mr. Garfield Moore has been very well served. Anyway, the point of Tobago having a greater focus on security and therefore requiring some portfolio responsibility in the THA is not lost on me. As the chairman of the National Security Council, that is not an unimportant point. Secondly, with respect to owning property and having grass grow over it, the Chief Secretary is here and I'm sure you heard that. And the point that we all shouldn't be waiting for Sandals to come. Because since we made that announcement that we're looking in that direction, the gestation period of that project is going to be a fairly long one. But it is not to be that we wait until that comes. There are other properties in Tobago, including the Magdalena. I can tell you, we have been trying to get an international brand into which we could put the Magdalena Hotel. It used to be the Hilton. And we have had great difficulty and not very many people are interested in, largely because of our location. Also, it doesn't have a usable beach. I mean, the beach is a little too active. We've been trying to get off the ground the whole question of a breakwater built. We got into some to and fro in there with the Ministry of Works and the experts, but we will get it done. But in the meantime, what is happening is that we are encouraging those who have those properties to keep your properties in operation. Some people are telling you because we have a ferry service that the hotels are empty. I didn't know many people are coming from the boat into the hotels. I suspect there's a lot of fooling of oneself. There are other issues there. There are other issues in there. I don't know how many people come off the boat and go to hotels in Tobago. Make me aware. We also know that we have not been promoting Tobago sufficiently effectively. And that is the reason why we've shut down the TDC and we've created two entities, one to promote Trinidad and one to promote Tobago. Because the experts have told us, we got expert advice, no, we looked at it, we're not being very capricious here. We looked at it, what is the problem? And they said, we're trying to promote Trinidad and Tobago, two different products using the same mechanism, and we had cross purposes. Tobago as a resort destination, Trinidad has a different kind of product. I have not yet seen the effect of that separation, but I'm hopeful that it will give us the result that we anticipate. You might know a little bit more than I do about how the Tobago promotions are going from the, what's it called? Tobago Tourism Agency. And I hope it's not just a situation of, old wine in new bottle. In Trinidad, we have the promote teach or something like that. These Tourism Trinidad Limited. These entities, their assignment is to promote the two arms of the state, Tobago and Trinidad, and we trust that they will bring their expertise to bear. We don't have all the resources that they would like us to have, but we do have some resources, and a lot of the resources that we need are just good ideas. Yes, next person, please.
The lady in the center.
Good night. I am Julia Moses, but I'm actually from Trinidad. I just have two questions.
Lot of Trinidadians here tonight.
I am from Trinidad.
That means the inward migration that Mr. Jack spoke about is taking place.
I couldn't pass up the opportunity to get to talk to Dr. Rowley. Dr. Rowley, first thing, I want to thank you very much for acknowledging God that the earthquake didn't destroy Trinidad. You said we thank God for his mercy. I appreciate that very much. The next thing I appreciate is that you all did not go to the IMF My daughter is still working. My sister is still working. All of us in Trinidad are working. Thank you very much for that. Good night.
Thank you. Maybe I should say something here. That's a very important point. That's a citizen who has appreciated where we at and what we're dealing with. Given the fact that it takes money to fund what the government does in servicing the country, and in a short space of time, we have been losing significant revenue since 2014. This government came into office in 2015. In one fiscal year, in terms of comparison with previous years, because of a loss of revenue from the products we sell, we are without, in that 1 year alone, $20 billion less than we had in some previous years. $20,000 million. That is a reality. So we have to keep our vessel afloat, keep the country on even keel in the absence of that kind of money. So when a citizen says that she's glad that she still has her job and somebody else in the family still has a job, that's the first milepost. Hold on to what we have. And this government has kept its employees largely on the public payroll. And we've borrowed for a development program. And we always can use more at the individual level, at the national level, but it will be crazy to make our #1 priority getting more from less. The first thing is to ensure that we do not lose the gains that we've made, starting with the job. Some other governments have taken the position of reducing the public service expenditure to bring revenue in line with expenditure. We have not done that. We are banking on the fact that we'll get economic growth. We're running some debt. We're running a development program, and eventually we'll work our way out of this situation. We have not used retrenchment as a solution to our problem, and we hope we don't. And she said she's thankful that we have not gone to the IMF. We have to manage the country properly so that we do not require an IMF intervention. Because the IMF is the lender of last resort. It means that you could not borrow anywhere else. You've run out of money, foreign exchange in particular. You now cannot fund what you have to fund. Worse, you cannot pay the debt that you've incurred. So we don't want to go there. We are managing, pulling all those levers and ensuring that we can do what has to be done so we do not have to resort to an IMF bailout. So she understands very well what the government is dealing with, what the country is dealing with, and she's being reasonable. I thank you for that.
Mr. Prime Minister, if you would permit me, we have 15 more minutes for questions. So we will take the questions of the persons in the lines. So we're asking persons, no one else to join the lines. We're going to really try to take the questions.
Let's put it this way. Let's not have any more persons join the line. We have a lot in the line. I'll try to allow it so that all who are in the line will be able to ask your question if you keep it brief. Is that Pandy?
Yes, Dr. Rowley. Yes, Dr.
But it's the gentleman still
go ahead.
left in yellow.
Tell us your name. That's my former teammate. We played on the same team at one time.
Mr. Pandey, just a minute. It's the gentleman in yellow.
Hold on.
Can you kindly go ahead? And then we'll come back to you. We're alternating.
The gentleman with the white. Hold on there.
Yeah.
Yes, please, go ahead. Let's keep it short, please.
Excuse me. My name is Richard Diamond Bones, a.k.a. Truly Diamond. Good night to you, Dr. Keith Rowley, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, and to your executive. Something is bothering me. And this is a conversation in Tobago that we are dealing with right now, right? And let me first recognize a good friend of mine, very articulate, very passionate and loved, Mr. Sheldon Cunningham. I'm asking the Chief Secretary tonight, while you are here, why it is Sheldon Cunningham have not been a secretary. Excuse me, this is a Tobago conversation. I'm asking a question, right? Good. Dr. Rowley, excuse me, right? The only person I could be able to talk to as a representative is Mr. Sheldon Cunningham. There are times I was in certain situation and he was the only one who had helped me and helped others within the making of things.
Mr. Bourne,
Yes.
we appreciate that. So we're just asking you to ask the questions. You have 2 questions. You said ask the questions and then wait for the response.
All right.
Very kindly. Thank you.
No problem. No problem with that. Dr. Rowley, I heard you say something earlier that when the highway was building, they were distractors. But I need to recognize somebody who is dead and gone, Mr. A.N. Robinson, who was there as a prime minister for a certain amount of time, and he had built the Deepwater Harbor, which you, Dr. Rowley, said was how could he build a Deepwater Harbor on a dock pond?
Mr. Bourne, do you actually have a question? Do you have a question?
And now,
Mr. Bourne,
yes,
do you actually have a question to ask,
Yes,
Dr. Rowley?
yes,
okay,
ma'am.
so we're asking you to ask the question very directly. Ask the question. Thank you.
Ma'am, excuse me, right? I'm just saying what he has said because politics, I believe politics is a nasty game. That's all I can say right now because
All right, and we
if you
just
could
want
say
you to
that,
ask, we want you to ask the question. So ask Dr. Rowley the question
okay.
very directly
Yes.
so we can move on to someone else.
Dr. Rowley, I heard you say that, right? Now you are in charge now. What is your position for Tobago? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Bones has asked me a question. Mr. Bones has asked me a question which is outside of my remit. I have no answer for him, and I would leave his question to be answered by Chief Secretary as to what the future holds for Mr. Sheldon Cunningham. The selection of secretaries is the prerogative of the Chief Secretary, and I'm sure that he would have made the best selection at the time. And as we go forward, you know, I'm sure that Mr. Cunningham didn't send him to ask that question. And as to what my vision is for Tobago, or my intention is for Tobago, it makes the point. As I started out saying, a lot of what is said is not heard or absorbed. It takes a while. So I'll keep on saying what my vision is for Tobago, and eventually Mr. Bones will understand what I'm saying. Thank you very much, Mr. Bones. Next person, please. My friend, Pandy.
Good night, Dr. Keith Rowley.
Good night. How are you doing?
Good night to all the members.
You don't have much time for the good night, sir.
Also, the Tobago House of Assembly. Tonight, I don't have the time, but I'm going to give you in a little bit. The situation in Tobago is very serious. Agriculture is in shambles. Health is in shambles. Sports need a lot of fixing because I'm a coach, netball coach for over 50 years now, and working with youths, if they doesn't have anything to do with their energy, it ends up in juvenile delinquency. The other thing is crime. Crime is escalating in Tobago. They say there are 9 areas where things are coming in illegally and whatnot. I'm not seeing any boat making the wrongs or whatnot. Try to do something about it. The situation with the people, they want, I have to say, dislodged in the Crown Point area. I don't live in Signal Hill anymore. I live in the Crown Point area.
Mr. Pandey,
No,
with all due respect, Mr. Pandey.
I prefer Signal Hill. Prefer Signal Hill. But the situation, I'm living there. And I'm concerned. I'm not
pleased with what's going on. Compulsory acquisition, and you don't have any place to put these people. These people don't want to move in. These people don't want to move. But the situation is to be looked upon. Internal self-government for Tobago. I'm not hearing nothing about constitutional reform. If you have to build a house, you have to look for a strong foundation. And I'm not seeing anything about that. Internal self-government for Tobago is not a quick fix. It's not a quick fix. It's serious. It's a serious thing. I'm concerned because from the inception I've made my contribution and I'm not seeing anything going. Only talk.
Thank you very much for your comprehensive list. Let me just respond to the last point you made, internal self-government. As you know, we had widespread consultation in Tobago over a number of years on that subject. It produced a document, and while the document is not perfect, it's a draft document, there are still some persons who believe that the document is not what should have come out of Tobago and so on, but you always get persons with a different point of view. However, the consultations took place over a lengthy period of time, and a lot of weighty issues got themselves attended to, and a document was prepared by competent authorities that were put on it. And the pathway towards some enactment or some amendment to the country's constitution was that that document came to the cabinet. The cabinet did not take a position on it, except that we took it to the parliament, where the cabinet is present, and the document was put to the entire parliament. It is now before a joint select committee of the parliament. There is no other avenue to interfere with our constitution. So notwithstanding what anybody else will say in Tobago about they're going to give you this or they're going to give you that, if you are to be given or to have anything come out of an amendment to the constitution, the only place it can be amended is in the parliament. A document arising out of widespread consultation, a draft document, is in the parliament before all the parliamentarians. The area in the constitution that has to be amended to give any change, upward or downward, is that section of, I think section 75 of the constitution, that has to be amended by a special majority, which means that whatever you want in Tobago, whatever you want to have, how originally you want to have it, it is the parliamentarians, not just the government, because the government does not have the requisite majority to change that part of the constitution. It requires the cooperation of others in the parliament. And that is why it's a joint select committee, government, opposition, independent. They are going to do that work now and look at the draft and determine what from that draft can be made into law to amend Tobago's status. This government, this political party which we represent, we have done all that can be done to date, which is to facilitate and support the consultation, support it at the level of our political party, support it at the level of cabinet. We have some issues with the draft as well, but that is how you develop law. You bring it to the legislative, and there it is fashioned. We have to wait to see how that committee progresses, and out of it will come some decision. The other things he mentioned, the state of health, I don't think it is collapse. I mean, difficulties are not to be magnified in that way. I'm sure you have challenges in the health system, and I'm sure there can be improvements. And with respect to security, that's an important point. We have to take away our youngsters from being encouraged into a life of crime or non-production, and of course creating areas where they can have positive energies, and sport is one of those. And there are other issues that young people can get involved in, and that is why tonight we have with us the Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs, because Tobago has distinguished itself by generating a lot of productive young people, and we want that to continue. Yes,
the lady
on that side. Let's keep your intervention short, because I'll try to hear all of you, but it's going to take a little while. So let's keep your questions short or your statements very short, and let's give everybody who's standing a chance.
Hi, good evening, Dr. Rowley. All protocols observed. My name is Crystal Edwards, and I just wanted to say, if we're talking about development, we first have to develop our most important resource, which is our human resource. No other development will make sense if it is that we aren't all on board. And in Tobago, it was mentioned tonight that if we don't support it, we first have to know what it is we love and what we want here in Tobago. You go to Grenada and they could tell you everything about the Speyside. How many Tobagonians know where the highest peak in Tobago is in Speyside at Pigeon Peak? How many people know we have the largest brain coral in the Western Hemisphere, even the world? Right? So I think that is very important that Tobagonians' mentality, even from the earliest stage, be addressed, because nothing else would make sense. I think I would like to see gates, for example, if we're talking about development. Look at more Tobago-centric areas of study, right? Stuff that leads towards developing our tourism and the associated fields of agriculture and fisheries. And once people are qualified, because you look anywhere in the world and you find Trinbagonians holding some of the highest positions in any sector. And the reason they're out there, I would like to say, is because a lot of them weren't welcomed back home. We tiptoe around the topic, but a lot of young people come home and they're not absorbed into the workforce. Their areas of expertise, they end up coming back and they function in.
Ms. Edwards, I'm going to have to stop you. Is that your second and final question?
It's interrelated, so yeah, I'll wrap up.
You'll wrap up.
Yes.
Thank you.
Right, so I would like to see GATE focus on more Tobago-centric areas of study. And as we look towards development in terms of Sandals and otherwise, I would like to ask that you take into consideration the integrated coastal and ocean management aspect of it. As a marine and wildlife conservation biologist, I think it's something that we take for granted. And if it is you want to develop Tobago, we have to take into consideration the interaction with our coastlines. Our fishermen and different stakeholders could see the declination of those areas. So as you move forward in doing that, I'm asking that the necessary committees be put in place and that it be taken into consideration that we need to develop these things and not lose them. You can't have tourism without what we consider clean, green, safe, and serene.
Thank you so very much.
Well said. Very well said. There's hardly anything I can add to that, except to say that agriculture without farmers is a pipe dream. Everybody could tell you how important agriculture is. But most people have long fingernails, and the other half don't want to do no dirt on their hand. And some don't even want the sun on their back. And some hate to sweat. But of course, we can talk agriculture. The harvest is calling, but the reapers are few. Right? We need to get some of our young people involved in food production. It is not the kind of drudgery that it used to be. There are technical ways and there are technological improvements now that make agriculture a joy undercover. Dr. Aline I encourage him to come back to Trinidad and Tobago to bring his expertise from Florida, and he's here. We're trying to get systems going to increase our planting material, to look at our gene pool, to give agriculture that boost. Tobago, he comes here in Tobago, and sometimes the reports I get tell me that we still are lacking in some of the enthusiasm that we have to have. Not enough Tobagonians want to make use of that God-given resource, the land and the opportunity to produce food. But of course, there's no shortage of Tobagonians telling me, the boat ain't come, the boat ain't come, the boat ain't come. Right? I saw a pickup outside of Bill Brown Supermarket the other evening. And at quick glance, one side of the tray was down, tarpaulin over it, and I'm not here bad-mouthing the vendor. I was just looking at it with the eyes of a Tobagonian to see what you are producing. Every single thing on that pickup came from Trinidad on the boat. I have no issue with Trinidad production. I'm encouraging the same thing down there too. But I'm not encouraging laziness and worthlessness in Tobago. Pumpkin, carrot, cucumber. You mean Tobago can't grow that? And if the boat doesn't bring it, I have to head down and have it up down the area. The boat ain't come, the boat ain't come, the boat ain't come. It really annoys me. We need to get serious in Tobago. And those of you who have children, Tell them that a good living can be made in producing food in Tobago, and there's dignity in food production, and there's a market there. And in fact, the Trinidad market should be your market as it used to be when my grandfather and my father worked here in Tobago. There are not enough people in Tobago who want to take that opportunity. And I'm appealing to you, if you don't do it, eventually others will come and do it, and then you will complain. You will complain. The young lady mentioned persons with skills coming back to Tobago not being welcomed. Well, let me say to you, as much as you think, there's a lot that is missing from the Tobago population which can be augmented by those who come into you and join you, especially those of our nationals who gone abroad and picked up additional skills. When they come among you, welcome them as part of the development of Tobago and of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, ma'am. Remember to keep your comments or your questions very straight to the point. You're allowed 2.
Let's get going.
Good night. My name is Wendy Devines. I'm a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago and resident of Goodwood. Now, I'm living close to the agriculture place at Goodwood. And I work Goodwood, yeah.
Okay.
And I work at URP, and not that I'm not thankful for the $81, but the money that you put into the program, because they say that URP is not a work, it is a program. But we are programmed to do nothing. So why it is that you don't put the money in agriculture and take the workers from URP and put them over to agriculture to work? And instead of importing food, we can export, because the food that comes from St. Vincent, because I like dasheen, and the dasheen that comes to me, that I buy from St. Vincent, it's soft many times and I have to throw it away. So my little, because I haven't got land space, my little money that I working for, most time when I buy food from that little money, I cannot use it. So if I had land space, excuse me please ma'am, I need to be respected here.
Let her speak please, let's hear her please.
If I had land space, I would have plants, right? And then another thing is that they are saying that they are helping people who want to enter into small business. Now, I have a certificate in cooking. I could bake and cook. And I tried to get some money from, it was business development, but they're going over to Condev now. They processed the check, but suddenly it did not work because they took so long to give it up that the quotation that I made, it expired. I took it back, and up to now I can't. That was like 2016. So if it is that they are promising to help people with small business, I think that they should live up to their promises, right? So I would like those kind of areas to be addressed, agriculture and the small business.
Well said.
Thank you.
Well said.
Mr. Prime Minister.
But let me just clarify something here. She made a point about using URP in agriculture. There are some aspects of agricultural development, especially infrastructural things, that can absorb that thought. But if we have 2 or 3 farmers in Tobago producing dasheen, or any other crop for that matter, like dasheen, potato, or cassava, and then they go to the market and sell what they produce from their own labor, it will be wholly unacceptable, or it should not be encouraged, that another farm that the taxpayers pay people to produce dasheen come to the market to compete with the little farmer who had done his own thing. And that is the economics of not allowing you to use the state labor to pay to produce, to compete with those who have done it on their own. But if somebody in URP wants help to go out and start their own dasheen patch, then that is acceptable. And that's where the THA should come in and help those who have that kind of enthusiasm and attitude. And of course, the programs that we have not always deliver what we expect them to do. But if we're in touch with the people like the last speaker, to know where the failings are, we can improve those programs.
Mr.
Yes,
Prime Minister, if you'd allow me, I'm really, really conscious of the time. We have about 6 minutes. So what we can do, we ask the 2 persons at the mic to say their questions, and then we...
The 6 minutes you have, those are the 6 minutes of broadcast time.
Broadcast time.
Okay, well, when the broadcast time is over, we'll end the broadcast, but we'll finish the conversation here.
Okay.
Okay?
No problem.
So, we promise to take those in line, so no new ones in the line, I'll hear all of you. So just keep it tight and let's go.
Okay, my concerns are, one, that my name is Laura Williams and I'm from Mariah. Okay, my concerns are, one, that there are contract workers in the THA who have not been paid their gratuity maybe 5 years down the road. Presently, there are parents who are waiting to buy books for their children and are depending on that money to assist. So we would like somebody from the THA to answer that question. That's one. Number two, we see that there is a humanitarian crisis just across the border in Venezuela. There are some of us who have relatives there, and we would like to know what is put in place for us to help our relatives. Maybe if we could get to bring them here, maybe the Minister of National Security could answer what they have put in place with the Immigration Department, that we can go and get some reprieve for our relatives, because, you know, we see the suffering, we see what's going on, and everybody knows about it. So we want to know what can be done and what we could do to assist. Thank you.
Minister of National Security, could you just respond to that briefly, please?
Hi, good evening. If you have relatives in Venezuela, as you should be aware, we have an embassy down there, so I can raise it with them when we go down on Saturday to find out what they have in place there. But from an immigration point of view, and this is not an open invitation, but you don't need a visa to come to Trinidad from Venezuela. So if you wanted your relatives to come for that period of time, of course they're welcome to do so, and then have to return. And whilst they're here, if there are applications that can be made on their behalf on your sponsor, again, we have a process at the Ministry of National Security, and in particular the Immigration Department, to deal with that. So Immigration Department and Ministry of National Security can look into that as well. Okay.
With respect to the gratuity, that's a problem that seems never to want to go away. Chief Secretary, you've heard, and we have here the Financial Secretary as well. These people who have completed their assignments and are owed these gratuities, it's something that seems to be always occurring whenever we meet people who've served in the public service, and we'll appreciate some focus to ensure. I know that in many instances the record keeping in the public service has been so poorly done that when it's time to pay these people, the records are not there, and then public servants use that as an excuse not to get it done. So you've heard the complaint, and I'm sure that you would look into it. Next person.
Yes, Eric Johnson from Buku. 4 concerns.
What's that?
4 quick concerns.
4 questions.
No, concerns.
4 concerns.
So, yeah.
Let's make it 2 now. Let's go.
Yeah. On Sandals, if it's possible that they upgrade the golf course next to Buku there, Mount Irvin. So Sandals will drive
you came in late, right? We started with that.
Yeah.
We started with that. So go to the next point.
Okay. On NIS, if you have a lot of small businesses, if you could have them like register and pay NIS for the worker, go to paint shops, all these things.
Okay, so I'm asking persons to be really respectful. Allow the individual to make the points without the side talking, please.
Children leaving school between 17 and 21. If there's some way you could involve the CPEP program with the Army. So those who don't enroll with the Costa program, like the dropouts or whatever, those on the street, you could have them put into the CPEP program run by the Army.
Okay, all right.
You'll have,
okay.
Here you give them the training, the roster, where they go if it's, for the next 3 or 4 years.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. We do have a program where youngsters in that age group are taken within the Army. Is that program operating in Tobago, Milat and my part? No, but is it operating at all? Well, the Chief Secretary is telling me that we have some element, but that is what is that is the response to the question, the idea you raised about young people having a connection with the military and being guided there. So if the program is not here, then it ought to be, and if it is here, then the Minister of National Security will look into that, because it will provide some opportunity for some young people to be given some mentoring, which is quite successful in Trinidad. I missed, there was another point he made which I missed. I can't remember, there was another one of his points. NIS, yes, about paying NIS. There's a law that is in place that if your business is of a certain size, you are required by law to be registered. So it's not a favor or something to come, it is existing. Once your business is deemed to be doing a certain amount of business above a particular level, you are required to register, and then you have to, no, I'm wrong, I'm talking about VAT. Excuse me, that's VAT. NIS, yes, you have, if you're employing people, you have to have a registration in place. Either they come with a registration and you continue to make your subscription, and if they are not, then you initiate a registration, and if you do not do so, it's a crime and there's a penalty. So therefore, if you're employing people, or if you're an employee and your employer is not paying NIS, you go to the, as an employee, you complain to the Labor Department here in Tobago, and if you're an employer, then check yourself, because you're breaking the law. Okay, next person.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sharon K. Sitterhall. My question to you and to the THA as well is building. Has the government ever considered earth building? It's cheaper, it's hurricane-proof, it's earthquake-proof. So that's my question to you.
When you say earth building, what do you mean?
Rammed earth building.
What?
Rammed earth. It's not long time, but it's very strong.
I suspect you're talking about tapia houses.
No, I'm talking about rammed earth housing.
Well, in this gathering, those of us who have been around Tobago for a long time, we call them tapia house. Yes, they're cooler. Yes, they withstand the shaking more. But I think you'll have great difficulty taking Tobagonians back to tapia house. But of course, it's a means of construction that is standard in some parts of the world. But we have moved to a different kind of construction, which is probably better. Let's put it that way. So,
good night.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Hackett.
Good night. My name is Rhonda Hackett. I am here representing the Peace Negotiation Movement. Peace stands for Provide Equivalent, Equitable Compensation for Everyone. Now, we belong to the Crown Point Bonaccord area that has been impacted by the land acquisition for the airport terminal building. Developing out of that development process for the island of Tobago, there has been an information vacuum that has been created since May 14th, when this information was presented during a series of meetings at the Ravenels Resort. What I would like to find out will be, why is it an agency has not been provided to assist the people, the community within the area with information, with counseling and other needed services? Who is the implementing agency for the airport terminal project? Who is the agency that will be responsible for the compensation to these citizens that will be impacted, and will that compensation be represented in the upcoming budget? The group has been formed as a result of this vacuum that has been created and a lot of needs and questions unanswered to help to assist that process. And my final question is, when will further information be officially provided to these individuals?
Thank you, Ms. Hackett.
Quite a package. Thank you very much for raising that issue. That matter, the question of the implementing agency, because of how we are proceeding to get that done, I mentioned earlier on, we're using the build, old, lease transfer. That is a central government initiative to get that done. The implementing agency, NIDCO at stage, National Infrastructure Development Company, and it's driven by the Ministry of Finance because it's really a financial package. The central government and the Tobago House of Assembly are working together on this project. But if I'm to be honest with you, as I should be and I must be, and it's the only way I know it, there has been some premature so-called consultation on that matter, because we went out to the public before the information was available, and the public quite rightly asked questions that could not have been answered by those who went out there. The central government discovered that there was a point of view that all the land between the current terminal building and the end of the runway is to be acquired. The position of the government, and we're working with the THA on that, and I think we're on the same page on that now. We are only acquiring land that is required specifically for the development that we are going to be doing now. That means all those people who were disturbed on the entire length, it's only a portion of that that is required. And those of us in central government and in Trinidad, we were surprised by this development in Tobago. So that is putting it on the table. We are now clear as to the question she raised. The implementing agency is the National Infrastructure Development Company. The arrangement for the funding, which is the lifeblood of it, is to be done by the Ministry of Finance. The Tobago House of Assembly is involved in the whole question of what we're going to build, how we're going to proceed, and it's an integral part of it. So the question also about letting people know and counseling them and so on, in the very near future, we are going to restart that process, and that gap that developed between May and now will disappear. And we will proceed to acquire a parcel of land to build the terminal building and whatever car parking is required, and that is all that we are going to acquire. I'm not a surveyor, I can't tell you. The NIDCO will determine that. That will be determined by what we're going to build. We are still in the process with the consultants of determining what we're going to build. So if we have not finalized the terminal building itself, we certainly can't finalize how much land we want if we are going to confine ourselves to acquiring just what we need. But some persons went out and said that we're going to acquire all the land, and I mean people talking about acquiring Rovenal Hotel and all. That is not known to us. And then, of course, the local politicos need a soapbox and they jump on that. Let me just say, we are going to do this in a civilized and sensible and professional way. And NIDCO is a professional agency. I have with me here today the deputy chairman of NIDCO listening to these proceedings, and you would have heard that lady's intervention, and we are working on it. But in terms of land acquisition and property acquisition, we are not going to do any blanket acquisition. We are going to acquire just what we need for the development that we are embarked upon. And secondly, the acquisition of land, if it's private land to be acquired and to be paid for by public monies, it can be done in two ways. If the THA has cash in their hand, they are legally able to go and buy land from people. They've done it before. I don't know that they have any cash now to go and buy any land from anybody. Secondly, if the land has to be acquired under the Land Acquisition Act, that is only a matter for Parliament, a matter for Parliament only. So how are we going to do it? I'm not aware that the THA has the cash to buy the land from people. I'm aware that the authority to acquire lands is a parliamentary process, and the parliamentary process is a central government initiative. So when you put all those things together, you should get a picture as to how we're going to proceed. But we are working together now, the THA and the central government, and we are expediting this. And so the questions that she raised are all valid questions, and the answers are to be made available in the very near future. But I gave you one tonight. We are not acquiring 1 foot of land that we do not need for the development project that we would have agreed upon eventually when the engineers sign off on it. Next person, please.
Hello,
Yes,
good night,
sir.
Mr. Minister, Mr. Prime Minister. Good night, Mr. Dwayne Cupid. Before you there tonight, the young lady before had mentioned the integration between the development of the Sandals and the area down there in terms of the coral reef. Very interested in terms of the well-being of the coral reef and the area, because that area is a schooling area for fish and all these kinds of things. What development where that would be taking place? I didn't hear him mention that before, so I thought I would bring that up again. And with regards to the current crime situation with the young people, a lot of young people now are actually being more involved in crime. What is the THA's standpoint with regards to guiding these young people away from that? No, despite it's their, might be their choice.
I got your 2 points. I got your 2 points. Thank you very much. I'm not going to speak for the THA tonight because we have a lot of THA people here and they have the whole year to speak for themselves. But we have a national crime problem. There's no part of this country that is immune to the criminal conduct that is taking place across the board. We are taking steps at the level of central government to ensure that we have an appropriate response, and you would have seen what we have done recently, what we are doing now. And there's some national crime plan that we've launched. We've got new personnel in place. We've got a new minister. We have a police service that we're trying to give all the resources and the support. We have other agencies of the national security apparatus that we're supporting. Crime is on the front burner with respect to attention by this government because it impacts on everything else that we do. And with respect to the effect of the Sandals project on the coral reef, all the appropriate safeguards will be in place, and there's an agency whose job it is to see that what we do there meet those standards, the EMA. We are now to make the application in a way, and there's some work going on already in preparation for that. And this will not be the first large project on the seafront anywhere in the Caribbean. We're not inventing any wheel here. What I could say to you though, that the Sandals brand and the Sandals business have won a number of international awards for the sensitivity in environmental matters with respect to the projects that they have done, and Tobago will be no less. So there's no reason to fear that the project will negatively impact on the reef and the surrounding areas offshore, because we will ensure that whatever we do there, that aspect of things remain an integral part of it. And we can use, conservation means wise use. It doesn't mean don't touch it, don't use it. It means wise use, or one can go further and say sensible use. We would be foolish to want to encourage anything, not just at that area, but anywhere in Tobago, that would eventually have the effect of degrading what is Tobago's greatest asset, which is its natural resource base. So rest assured that we have that in mind. Next person on the side.
Good night, Prime Minister.
Good night, sir.
How are you, sir?
All my friends are out tonight. I'm fine, Mr. Walter. I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Nice to see you.
Yes. I have 3 recommendations, and I want to deal with my area of expertise, and that is telecommunication.
Communication.
The name is Hewlett Waldron. 1, call center.
Sorry, I missed that.
Call center. Call center.
Call center, yes. Okay.
And about 30 years ago, the call center Signal Hill was erected. I had an input into that one. That was not the original plan for the call center for Tobago as a whole. That call center is non-profitable. As we say, it is non-profitable. It makes no sense. What we are envisioning is a series of call centers throughout Tobago. As you might know, call centers are in Trinidad, they are in Japan, China. When you make a call to make a report of, you go to China, Japan also. We have we have the language. We have the educational levels. We have the hurricane belt that we are covered with. We are central for call centers. 30 years ago, I made a proposal, and many of the people here were present at that proposal. I was abroad and I came here. I brought about 10 people to give that proposal for a call center ring in Tobago. I have not seen it. The one that we have is not working. It is not employing anybody, right? And it makes no sense. So you need to look into that call center.
No, but wait a minute, before you go to the next point. If the one that you have is not being utilized for some reason,
all right,
what makes you think that if you have 3 or 4 more, they will be utilized?
All right, let me explain. That is not a call center. In 30 years ago, Trinidad and Tobago Telephone Company had what you call an operator center. You dial 0, you want a number, or you dial any number, 18, you get a number. The operators were there. They were retrenched, right? It is the same thing that is happening up there, up in the center. You dial 211, you get a person, they ask you where John James lives. You tell them, and that's all they will do up in exemptive future.
Is anyone using the call center now?
But it is not a profitable concern. That's the problem. It is used, but it's not making any money. What we want is we want call centers that when people dial from any part of the world, they could use it. It's used in the United States. You could do the research on it. Right? That's but
okay.
Right? It's used in the United States. I've worked with them. I worked in China with them. That is what you call call centers. It is not making any sense. That's number one. So you all could do the research on that one. Number 2, a data center is required for Tobago. It could be located at Cove. With the advent of Sandals and all the development that is going on in Tobago, we need a data center. Right? We need to look into that also. The third one is that we need what we call alternative routing. And the hurricane and the earthquake yesterday, or 2 days ago, if something happened in Trinidad, you know that we could not have made a call to the United States in any way. So we need what we call alternative routing, where you could route to another country or another island, and they will route you to the United States or route back to Trinidad. So these are my
okay, thank you very much.
main concerns.
There's some technical issues then, right.
Mr. Walshon, I'm just reminding persons 1 question per individual, and we want to just thank those viewing on.
We're coming close to the end, so yes, gentlemen.
Yeah, good night. My name is Rowley Thomas from Bloody Bay. Bloody Bay has so much water that it has been said that one secretary said he would have sold that water and take care of the whole island. This Bloody Bay water now is given to Lansome, Castara, and Palatavir. Supply them. What is really crazy about it is that the majority of the time, Bloody Bay cannot have his own water. In 2013, I put a peaceful demonstration calling the media, and later during that year, 2013, they start to run pipe from Bloody Bay River straight down to Englishman Bay. It's only Palatavir and Castara profit from that. You see the water come by Bloody Bay Junction and then go down. Bloody Bay people have been suffering for their own water from the junction go up for about 13 years. I have been up and down. Up to today, I went to a manager in Wassa, down lowlands. Because when we had protests and they rung the pipe, they say higher up where we have a liquor thing is not a tank. I call it a job. They said that they was going to build a tank. But while talking to the guy this morning, he said, why they haven't built that tank yet, and that's about 3 years now, is because that contractor built tank for Trinidad as well, and that contractor is in court with the government. So he does not know when. But my point is now, if Bloody Bay have been paying water bill, I tell you, sometime whole month, sometime 3 weeks, I call Tabini radio station until I tell Mr. Leacock, may I call him back that station, I'm fed up. I tell you personally, I stop paying water bill after that time. Let me ask you one question. Let me close with one question. Let me just close with this question.
Okay,
now,
make it a short question,
okay.
right?
Well, what I'm saying, if they don't know when that they're going to, this case could finish so that we could get a tank, I'm asking you, please, Because I call it an illegal thing. Receiving the money and that falls within. Could you please ask the minister who in charge of WASA, stop send bloody babe people bill until they solve this problem? Because all around the money.
Okay, I heard you. Thank you very much. No. I'm very happy that the Chief Secretary and his colleagues are here, because all the points that have been raised by a very knowledgeable citizen have been raised for you. Don't take bloody Bay people water and give it to Lance for me and Palatevere and Wales, and bloody Bay people can't get water. Please ensure that Bloody Bay people get Bloody Bay water first. It sounds like there's some technical issues and there's some legal issues. That is not their problem. Try and sort it out so that Bloody Bay people get Bloody Bay water. Now I'm going to make my own request to the Secretary and his people. Bloody Bay Beach remains one of the more pristine beaches on the island. For heaven's sake, not gonna build nothing down there like how they build in Castara. Because I must admit to you all have built something on Castara Beach that I find quite offensive. I don't know whose idea that was. But whoever built that monstrosity on Castara Beach, you have damaged that beach. The aesthetics of that beach has been destroyed. Because somewhere in Tobago, there's somebody who feels that the way to go about development in Tobago is to build as much structures on the beach, like Tunapuna. That is not how we go about development. Stay away from the beachfront and do your development inland, and let the natural beauty of the beaches be Tobago's heritage. So Mr. Bloody Bay, you want your water, I want my natural beauty of my beachfront. Thank you very much. Next person. We have 3 more people and then we'll close off. Thank you very much. Next one.
Good night, Mr. Minister. Joseph Johnson is my name, and I'm speaking on behalf of transportation. When I say transportation, I mean that we do not have a bus terminal on the island. Every day...
Before you go any further, did you get any new buses?
Yes, there are buses
here. You got
here.
the new buses?
Yes, there are buses
Good,
here.
you got something. Let's go then.
There are some of the buses that never been used because of fuel consumption, sparkly. Nevertheless, the bus terminal, which we don't have, rain is falling, people are standing on the side of the road. And
where do the buses operate from now? Where is your central dispatching point?
There is no bus.
Where?
Shore Park.
Shore Park?
Shore Park at the garage. So we
have... No. I'm talking about where are buses dispatched from in Scarborough?
Shore Park. Shore Park at the garage.
No, well, you got a real problem there. Yeah, continue, please.
And I am also looking at the tourism sector. When people come off the cruise ship...
Hold on. Before you go on, may I ask a question of my colleagues in the THA? Are there plans for having a proper dispatching area in Scarborough for buses?
Yes, there are plans. As a matter of fact...
Could you speak at the mic, please?
There are plans. As a matter of fact, the PTSC would have recently communicated that they are hoping in the next budget funds would be allocated to the Ministry of Public Utilities.
Yeah. You see what happens to me, yeah? You see what happens there, right? Okay, Chief Secretary, I get the point.
Mr. Prime Minister,
continue, sir.
This time is the rainy season, and when the rain is falling, even up to today and yesterday, people are standing on the side of the road. There is no shelter.
Okay, we got that point, so, because what we just touched on is that the THA understands that it has to be done, and they're looking for central government help in the allocation to fund it. Do you have a location identified?
Yes.
Okay, you've made the point, and I will remember that when we are doing the allocations. right? And we have a couple of people to remind me here. So in our limited allocations, that sounds like a priority.
Yeah, and I suggest that they use the marketplace.
Point made, point made. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Rowley.
Thank you. Good evening to you, sir.
And good evening to everyone. So this evening I'm here seeking your intervention on Hector Trim is the name, from Hope Village. All right. This evening I'm here seeking your intervention on 2 industrial relation matters involving the Occupational Safety and Health Agency. The first one, in the interest of time, I wouldn't go into it, but I would have passed a document onto your press secretary, and I wish that you look at it as a cover letter.
Thank you very much.
The second one, though, it relates to, this one is for all the employees of the agency. At this point, there's a dispute between CPO and the authority as to who are the employers of the staff at the agency. And as a result, for 2 and 3 consecutive contracts, 3-year contracts, we haven't been able to get gratuity, neither are we able to improve our terms and conditions of employment.
What?
Yeah. So when our new minister came in 2015, in our presence, she asked the permanent secretary to look into it. But since then, we must have changed about 3 or 4 permanent secretaries. And the matter is going nowhere. So
Thank you very much for raising it. Minister Young is here with me, and I'll ask him to make sure that we follow up on that. That doesn't sound right to me. Okay, we're down to our last contributor this evening. Please go to the microphone. Thank you very much.
Everybody, good night. My name is Marvin Raymond.
Could you speak
My name is Marvin Raymond.
Mr. Raymond,
I'm
yes,
from
please
Goodwood. I'm really from Trinidad, but I'm living in Goodwood now. I have a question for the Chief Secretary and whoever it is really under this crisis here in Tobago here. No, I am a landowner, and they do not want me to administrate for my lands across here in Tobago. I am the direct descendant of George Toby of Georgetown in Tobago. Georgetown in Tobago, the first town ever built in Tobago. People of Goodwood could tell you, my grandfather, he last month to man the mountain. I want to cry because it's my family that get killed out. Listen to me carefully. The first town in Tobago was Georgetown. I'm telling you all this. Nathaniel Toby, Isaac Toby, Sophia Toby, Charles Toby, those people were killed out. Those are my ancestors. My grandfather is the last man who manned the mountain. Imam, ask anybody in Goodwood today who living in Goodwood, who is the man who planted the whole of Tobago? It's the Tobys and them, George Toby. Go to Barbados, Grenada, St. Lucia, go anywhere around the world, go see anywhere you go, you see Georgetown. Go to Ascension, you see Georgetown. Barbados about Georgetown. St. Vincent about Georgetown. Guyana about Georgetown. These people in this premise land, they are Christian people. They go around the world. If some place is barren, like how Tobago was barren a long time, they came here and plant up here. That way to take Goodwood is the strongest hole in Tobago. In Tobago, yeah, Goodwood used to plant the whole of food and feed Trinidad and the Caribbean.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Just now, so one more thing.
No, you're running out of time.
I know that. What I want to say again, I paid all my things, all these duties, I paid everything that I had to pay in the office, my land tax, and still today, they do not want me to administrate for no lands because I am a descendant of the Toby. The Tobys and them own all, I want you to understand what I'm saying. The Tobys and them, Sandy Point is Tristan Sandy.
Okay, we've heard that.
Yes, we know all that. I'm saying
so,
one more thing.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I understand very well.
So why don't people who own the lands in Tobago, estate land, why don't you want them to administrate for it? Why?
Listen, I've heard your point. I'm going to ask you a question. Who is it that is preventing you from administrating for this land? No, you only have a minute.
Inland revenue.
Inland revenue.
Yeah, right in Tobago here. Right here, right here.
Okay, let me just say this. Nobody could prevent you from administrating the land if you have.
Yes, what tell you why? Right now, in good with you know they say we have no land. They say we have no land. It's only because I'm an educated person and I can prove the history of the people from my grandfather. Talk to me about it.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Toby. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Mr. Toby.
Wrap this thing up. Thank you.
Mr. Toby. Mr. Toby. Mr. Toby.
I am a Rowley. I am a Rowley and I am a Toby mixer. I am a Rowley and I am a Toby mix. And I'm telling you something, this is damn good.
Okay, wrap this thing up then.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Rowley. Okay, thank you very much, sir. All right, ladies and gentlemen,
Just
ladies and gentlemen, we thank you. Yes, sir. At this point in time, we have come to the end of conversations with the Prime Minister. I will allow the Prime Minister to say a few closing words.
Well, thank you very much. I must admit that I'm not able to respond to Mr. Toby's presentation. But anyone who has claimed to land, there are legal processes that nobody can deny you. But the history sounds a little enlightening to me. But I must thank you all very much for coming out and for raising with me, as the country's head of the country's executive, the issues that concern you and are problematic for you, and the issues in which you might have some aspiration. I'm very pleased that so many of you have a grasp of the situation around us, and it shows that you are paying attention to your own interests and your own circumstances. We do have in Tobago some issues that require the involvement of the central government to get those issues attended to. And I want to give you the assurance that the central government is very receptive to these issues as brought to us either from fora like these or from our colleagues in the THA putting them to us. And insofar as resources are available, we'll ensure that Tobago's allocation impacts on Tobago's expectation. And we have some development projects in Tobago which require your support, your cooperation, even your own ambition, personal ambition. And together we can get this done and change the face of Tobago for the better, because at this time in Tobago's history, we are poised to making some advances in infrastructural development and the creation of opportunities for our young people, because if we don't make these expansionary interventions for the economy, we'll be hard pressed to create opportunity for those young people that we are making and training. But what we've outlined to you today are opportunities of one kind or another, and if we get them done, then the next generation of Tobagoans would have had some good opportunities to improve themselves. And Mr. Jack, who started out the presentation tonight, talking about what we want to leave for our children and our grandchildren, that would be the measure of our success or failure. Success as a community, and as a nation, I dare say, is how much better the next generation is doing than the last one. That's how you measure the success. And we have a lot of potential right now. We are at this potential, that potential, that potential. I want to ask you finally, let's move from talking about our difficulties to doing something about it to make those difficulties disappear. So thank you very much for coming, and thank you very much for supporting us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister, and thank you very much for your overwhelming participation.